Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at, well, a giant, John D. Rockefeller. Oil, wealth, philanthropy. He's connected to it all. But was he this ruthless monopolist or more of a strategic visionary? Or maybe both?
That's the core question, isn't it? It's rarely black and white.
Exactly. So our mission here is to kind of trace how his leadership actually evolved. We're looking at 7 key stages.
Right, to see how he adapted and what skills came to the forefront at different times.
And the goal really is to pull out some insights, things that might resonate with entrepreneurs listening today.
Yeah, the scale of what he did is just astounding. He didn't just build a company, he built an industry and then tackled philanthropy with that same strategic mind.
Understanding that evolution feels crucial to getting a handle on his, let's say, complex legacy.
Definitely. It's still debated today for a reason.
Okay, so let's rewind. Way back. Cleveland, Ohio, mid-1850s, 1855 to 63.
Yeah, his very first steps.
He's 16, gets a job, assistant bookkeeper for Hewitt and Tuttle.
And you hear about his mother's influence, work hard, save your money, those sorts of values.
And even then, he's got that side hustle thing going on, right? Selling turkeys, potatoes.
Yeah, that entrepreneurial spark was there early.
So in that first job, those early years, what are the first, signs of leadership emerging?
Well, 3 things kind of pop out from that time. First, this real attention to detail. He actually liked the systems, the office methods, found satisfaction in it.
Okay, meticulous.
Very. Second, he quickly grasped the core business drivers, figuring out transportation costs, for example, even as a teenager.
That's key.
It becomes very key later. And third, persistence. Just absolutely relentless, apparently, when it came to collecting debts owed to the company.
Okay, so detail, understanding costs, and persistence. How did those actually, help him? What were the benefits then?
Well, big picture, they gave him a really strong foundation in business. He wasn't just pushing papers. He was learning finance, management, the nuts and bolts.
Okay.
And that transportation cost thing, he basically identified a key lever for efficiency, something he'd pull hard later in the oil game. And maybe most practically back then, saving his wages. He built his initial capital, the money he needed to start his own ventures later.
Right. So for someone starting out today, what are the lessons from Rockefeller, age 16?
I think it really hammers home a few basics. First, master the fundamentals. Understand your finances, your operations, whatever makes your business tick, inside and out.
Know your stuff.
Exactly. Second, identify your key cost drivers. Where are the big expenses? Where can you be smarter, more efficient? Find that leverage.
Makes sense.
And third, develop that resilience. You're going to hit walls. Persistence, just keeping at it, is absolutely essential.
Okay, moving forward a bit, 1863 to 65. He jumps into oil.
Right. The oil boom is starting, but it's pretty wild west at this point. Very risky.
Yeah, still doing the produce commission thing.
Yeah, but he sees this massive potential in refining oil specifically. Not drilling, refining, even when it looks super volatile.
So what leadership signs do we see in that move?
Well, clearly, vision, seeing the potential in a high growth, but yeah, risky market. He wasn't afraid of the chaos, it seems.
Okay.
Then, strategic partnerships. He teams up with the clerks, and then, crucially, brings in Henry Morrison Flagler. He knew he needed others.
Smarts and capital.
And experience Flagler brought, and finally, just bold decision-making. Buying out the Clark brothers in 65 for, what, $72,500? That was real money then, over $1 million today.
Wow. Taking control.
Exactly. He wanted the reins.
So how did those decisions pay off immediately?
Well, getting in early, even with the risk, meant positioning in a high-potential industry. He caught the wave just as it was building.
Good timing.
Critical timing. The partnerships brought access to capital and expertise he needed. And buying out the Clarks, that gave him control to execute his vision. No compromises.
So the lessons there for entrepreneurs looking at maybe a new choppy market?
I think they're pretty clear. 1, identify and seize those high-growth opportunities, even if they feel uncertain. Calculated risks.
Right.
2, choose partners wisely. You need their resources, but don't lose sight of your strategic direction. Balance that.
Good point.
And 3, be decisive when you need control. If having the final say is critical for your strategy, don't hesitate to secure it.
Okay, so after 1865, he's got control.
Yeah.
The company evolves Rockefeller and Andrews, then Rockefeller, Andrews, and Flagler.
Yeah.
And the focus becomes efficiency, laser focus.
Oh, yeah. This is where it really kicks into high gear. They weren't just refining, they were optimizing everything, using byproducts others threw away.
Finding money in the trash, basically.
Literally. And bringing things in-house, making their own barrels, handling their own plumbing, early vertical integration.
What leadership traits drove that?
Number 1, a relentless focus on cost-cutting. Obsessive, almost. Always asking, how can we do this cheaper?
Okay.
Number 2, innovation and resource use. Seeing value where others saw waste. That's creative thinking applied to industry. And number 3, early vertical integration. Recognizing the power of controlling your supply chain, even back then.
So what did that do for the bottom line? Tangible benefits.
Huge benefits. Significantly lower operating costs, for one. Using byproducts, doing things themselves, it all shaved pennies, which added up massively.
Pennies make pounds or dollars.
Absolutely. Which led directly to increased profitability, better margins than competitors, and controlling processes meant greater control over quality and reliability, less dependence on others.
So for businesses today wanting to be leaner, meaner, what's the echo from that period?
I think 3 things stand out. 1, efficiency is a powerful weapon. Never stop optimizing. It's a continuous process. 2, waste is a resource. Look around your own operations. What's being overlooked that could be valuable?
Good question.
And 3, consider controlling key processes. Does it make sense to bring parts of your supply or value chain in-house for cost or control benefits? By 1868, this obsession made them the biggest refinery in the world. That says it all.
Wow. Okay, now 1872. The Cleveland Massacre. Sounds dramatic.
It was dramatic. Rockefeller looks at the refining scene in Cleveland, loads of small, often inefficient players, and decides to consolidate. Fast.
How fast?
Incredibly fast. He acquired something like 22 out of 26 competitors in just a few months.
Whoa.
How his method was, well, direct. He'd approach a competitor, apparently show them his books to demonstrate how efficiently Standard Oil ran and how they likely couldn't compete long-term, then make an offer. Usually stock in Standard Oil, sometimes cash.
And if they refused?
He was prepared to compete ruthlessly, drive prices down, and potentially bankrupt them, though negotiation was the first step.
Assertive doesn't quite cover it.
No, but interestingly, he also brought some of the best former rivals like Pratt and Rogers into Standard Oil as partners. He valued their expertise.
So what leadership skills are really on display here?
Definitely strategic vision for consolidation, seeing the power in combining these smaller units. Also, direct, assertive negotiation. He knew what he wanted and went for it. And that ability to incorporate former rivals, pragmatism, recognizing talent even in competitors, and bringing it aboard.
What were the immediate gains from this conquest?
Well, it pretty much eliminated local competition in the Cleveland refining hub, stabilized prices, at least from his perspective.
Right.
He acquired assets and expertise on a massive scale, and the bigger entity achieved even greater economies of scale, more efficiency again.
The lessons for M&A today. Obviously, the legal landscape is totally different, but...
True, antitrust laws change the game completely, but maybe the principles are. Consolidation can drive efficiency, especially in fragmented markets, if done strategically and legally.
Right.
Be prepared for tough negotiations. Know your numbers, be firm but fair, and crucially, integrate the talent from acquired companies. Don't just buy assets, buy the people and their knowledge.
Okay, next phase. Late 1870s. He shifts focus again, this time to transportation.
Controlling
the flow. Exactly. He realized controlling refining wasn't enough if someone else controlled how the oil moved.
Railroads were king then, right? Mostly, yes. But Rockefeller had the foresight to see pipelines as the future for oil transport. Cheaper, more direct.
Ahead of the curve.
Way ahead. And he started clashing big time with the railroads, especially the powerful Pennsylvania Railroad. These were the infamous transportation wars.
How did he fight them?
He used his leverage. Standard Oil shipped so much oil he could demand rebates, favorable rates. He played railroads off against each other.
Using his market power.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he pushed hard on building his own pipeline network, sometimes secretly, to bypass them. He even acquired oil assets owned by the railroads.
What leadership qualities shine through here?
Again, strategic foresight, betting big on pipelines, also skillfully leveraging market position. He understood the power his volume gave him in negotiations, and just sheer persistence and resilience. These fights were brutal, involving price wars, legal battles, terrible publicity. He had to withstand enormous pressure.
And the payoff for winning control over transport.
Massive. reduced transportation costs dramatically through pipelines and railroad deals. That widened his advantage. It gave him increased control over distribution, reliability, speed, and critically, it crippled competitors, made it way harder and more expensive for anyone else to ship their oil.
So for entrepreneurs thinking about their supply chain, logistics,
Yeah,
what's the lesson?
I'd say control key infrastructure where you can. Owning or having significant influence over essential parts of your supply chain is a powerful advantage.
Nonsense.
Also, use your leverage intelligently. Understand your negotiating power, whether it's volume or something else, and use it strategically.
Yeah.
And prepare for backlash. Aggressive strategies, especially ones that disrupt powerful incumbents like the railroads then, will almost certainly provoke opposition. Be ready for it.
Okay, so that leads us into the 1880s, early 1900s, the age of the trust.
Right. Standard Oil had become this sprawling giant operating across many states with different laws. They needed a way to manage it centrally.
And the solution was the Standard Oil Trust, formed in 1882.
Exactly. It was a really innovative legal structure for its time. Basically, shareholders in the various Standard Oil companies turned their stock over to a board of trustees, including Rockefeller, who then managed the whole empire centrally.
A new way to organize and control.
A very effective one for a while. And interestingly, during this period, Rockefeller starts to step back a bit from the day-to-day grind.
Delegating more.
And entrusting huge operational responsibility to guys like John Dustin Archbold. He eventually becomes the first billionaire after the trust is broken up, funnily enough.
What leadership aspects define this era of the trust?
Well, organizational innovation is huge, creating that trust structure itself.
Yeah.
Also, his growing ability to delegate effectively to capable lieutenants.
Trusting the team.
Yeah, and it all points to long-term strategic planning. Building a framework designed for national, even global, control and sustained growth.
And the benefits of this trust structure were?
Primarily centralized control and coordination.
Yeah.
Unified strategy, efficient allocation of resources across the whole system.
No.
It fueled continued growth and market dominance. Standard Oil controlled, 90% of U.S. refining at its peak?
Incredible dominance.
And undeniably, it facilitated immense wealth accumulation, both for Rockefeller and the other shareholders, thanks to the efficiency and market power.
So thinking about sailing a business today again, very different rules, but what are the echoes?
Well, you still need to develop structures for scale. As you grow, your organization needs to evolve to handle complexity. Maybe not a trust, but the right legal and management structures.
Right.
Also, build and empower a strong team. You absolutely cannot micromanage a large enterprise. Delegation is vital.
Can't do it all yourself.
No way. And finally, understand the power of a unified strategy. Ensuring everyone is pulling in the same direction, guided by a central vision, is critical for large organizations.
Okay, finally the later period. Post-1890s. The tide starts to turn, right?
Yeah, the criticism really ramps up. Ida Tarbell's investigation for McClure's magazine was hugely influential, painting a pretty damning picture of Standard Oil's tactics.
The muckraking era.
Exactly. Plus, numerous lawsuits, state and federal, challenging the trust. It culminates in the big one, the 1911 Supreme Court decision ordering Standard Oil to be dismantled, broken up into 34 separate companies.
The end of the empire? Sort of.
Sort of. But this period also sees Rockefeller shift focus massively towards philanthropy on an unprecedented scale.
Setting up the foundations, University of Chicago, Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research.
Huge contributions to education, science, medicine, applying his business mind to giving, like using conditional grants to encourage others to give too.
So what leadership do we see in this final complex chapter?
Well, first, resilience under pressure. He faced decades of relentless attacks, legal fights, public condemnation. He weathered it.
And crumble.
No. Second, strategic philanthropy. It wasn't just writing checks, it was planned, targeted giving aimed at achieving specific, large-scale results, like eradicating diseases.
Applying business principles to charity.
Very much so. And third, maybe a late-life adaptation in public relations. Publishing memoirs, giving dimes to children, making some more conciliatory noises, trying to shape his legacy a bit.
And the outcomes of this period. For him, for society.
Well, for Rockefeller and the shareholders, even after the breakup, they held stock in those 34 successor companies. Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, Origins are here, so there was enduring wealth. Maybe even more wealth, some argue.
Right.
For society, the impact of the philanthropy was profound. major breakthroughs in fighting diseases like hookworm and yellow fever, huge boosts to education and research. It really shaped modern philanthropy.
A different kind of legacy.
A very different one. And over the long haul, it did contribute to a more positive public image, or at least a more complex one, though the robber baron label never fully disappeared.
So final lessons from this last phase for entrepreneurs today, especially successful ones.
I think they're really important. 1, anticipate and navigate regulatory headwinds. Dominance attracts scrutiny. Understand the legal and political landscape.
Be prepared.
Definitely. 2, consider your broader societal impact.
Yeah.
Think beyond just profit. How can your success, your resources, contribute positively?
The giving back aspect.
Exactly. And 3, manage your public narrative. Be conscious of public perception and how you engage with criticism. It matters, especially long term.
It's such a complicated story. A leader who built this monolith using often ruthless tactics, but then used the immense wealth generated to do undeniable good in other areas.
It absolutely is complex. Both the aggressive empire building and the transformative philanthropy are part of the same legacy.
Which really brings us to the final thought, directed at you listening. As you think about your own journey, your own ambitions, how did these lessons from Rockefeller, the good, the bad, the complex, how do they resonate with the world you operate in? It's a very different world, different rules, different expectations.
Yeah, thinking about that balance between driving ambition, ethical lines, and the potential you might have for broader impact. It's something worth reflecting on as you build your own path.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at, well, a giant, John D. Rockefeller. Oil, wealth, philanthropy. He's connected to it all. But was he this ruthless monopolist or more of a strategic visionary? Or maybe both.
That's the core question, isn't it? It's rarely black and white.
Exactly. So our mission here is to kind of trace how his leadership actually evolved. We're looking at 7 key stages.
Right, to see how he adapted and what skills came to the forefront at different times.
And the goal really is to pull out some insights, things that might resonate with entrepreneurs listening today.
Yeah, the scale of what he did is just astounding. He didn't just build a company, he built an industry and then tackled philanthropy with that same strategic mind.
Understanding that evolution feels crucial to getting a handle on his, let's say, complex legacy.
Definitely. It's still debated today for a reason.
Okay, so let's rewind. Way back. Cleveland, Ohio, mid-1850s, 1855 to 63.
Yeah, his very first steps.
He's 16, gets a job, assistant bookkeeper for Hewitt and Tuttle.
And you hear about his mother's influence, work hard, save your money, those sorts of values.
And even then, he's got that side hustle thing going on, right? Selling turkeys, potatoes.
Yeah, that entrepreneurial spark was there early.
So in that first job, those early years, what are the first, signs of leadership emerging?
Well, 3 things kind of pop out from that time. First, this real attention to detail. He actually liked the systems, the office methods, found satisfaction in it.
Okay, meticulous.
Very. Second, he quickly grasped the core business drivers, figuring out transportation costs, for example, even as a teenager.
That's key.
It becomes very key later. And third, persistence. Just absolutely relentless, apparently, when it came to collecting debts owed to the company.
Okay, so detail, understanding costs, and persistence. How did those actually, help him? What were the benefits then?
Well, big picture, they gave him a really strong foundation in business. He wasn't just pushing papers. He was learning finance, management, the nuts and bolts.
Okay.
And that transportation cost thing, he basically identified a key lever for efficiency, something he'd pull hard later in the oil game, and maybe most practically back then, saving his wages. He built his initial capital, the money he needed to start his own